in clinic, which is, cool sculpting's great. I've heard a lot about it online, and people tell me it's great. But I also have a friend who had it, and they feel like it didn't work. So we
It
were,
works. I can tell you it works.
yes, but why do some people, have that sense that it doesn't? So we've been thinking about that a little bit, and there's a few reasons that can occur. I think the first reason that can happen is that the person's goals weren't quite understood. So, they have a particular shape in mind, a particular goal in mind, and it wasn't quite understood, and most likely not enough panels were used.
Totally.
Right? So, if we want a cinched in waist, that appearance doesn't always come just from the front part, right? So if you have an unexperienced technician, they might put the applicators just right on the tummy and not take into consideration that the flank or the back is actually adding visually to that sense of fullness or squareness that happens to a lot of perimenopausal and menopausal women, right? So not enough cycles being used.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can speak to that one personally because I just did my flanks for the first time. And now that it's been, when did we do it? Was it like in December maybe?
Yeah.
January. Yeah, maybe it was before that. But anyways, but once we hit that like 60-day mark,
yeah,
I was like, whoa, because now I can really see how the back affects the overall shape. It's
of the front,
crazy.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one. And then the other thing is, if you think about 25 or 30% reduction and you have this much, you're going to lose about that much, which is significant. But I think as people, as humans, what we visualize in our mind is not like 25%. We think, I want change, and change means more like 50%, right? That's change in our mind. So how do you get that?
Yeah. And that's the thing is you have to have a treatment plan that's built that really typically almost always is going to look like a second session, right? For most people.
Maybe you need 2 cycles.
Some people need 3. Like it really depends on what your, again, like what you said is what are your cosmetic goals, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that I think is key. So doing enough, right? And doing it at the right place.
Yes.
How you're going to get the results that you're looking for with CoolSculpting. And then the other thing is something that we call change blindness. I don't know if you're familiar with that, right? We get used to what we look like.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. I mean,
we see it a lot with filler, like when we talk about face, or you see the people with lips that sometimes keep thinking that they should be bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is where I love before photos and medical photos, because we can say, okay, well, let's have a look,
Yeah.
It's no different for the body.
Yeah. And I like to say, like, if you're sitting outside and you're watching the grass grow and you're watching it every hour, every day, you don't even notice it's growing, but go away for a week, come back, that grass is grown, right? So the same thing holds true with these body contouring treatments. You are not going to notice the change. It's so crucial, so key that you come back for your medical photos, right? So many times whoever that friend is, that they haven't gone back for their photos to really compare before and afters.
And I think it might be worth talking about why we don't take measurements.
Yeah, we don't.
Right?
In terms of like you mean with a tape measure?
Yeah. People are like, well, how do I know, right? And because we all measure differently.
We're measuring shape, and then it's going to be variable depending on the quality of how you're tight. When we sew, right?
Yeah, all too well.
You develop a technique for measuring. So if you're not measuring the same way, I don't think that's particularly reliable. So that's the other thing. When we do your pictures, we have a template that we have you stand on.
Hmm.
And so we guarantee that your feet are always the same width apart. Say we're doing legs, or say, and then there's a cueing that we use to create, absolute sort of standardization with the photos. When we're doing your stomach, we'll have you kind of go like this and take a deep breath in. And that photo is taken on the very last bit of the exhale. So consistently, you cannot suck in, push your tummy out, or do anything to mess with that standardization. And I think that's key. And not on Instagram, there's all kinds of stuff going on. That's you have to be aware of that. But there's two reasons we do that in our clinic. One is to give you, if you're coming in for a consult and you look at pictures, to give you a realistic idea of what to expect, right?
Yeah.
And the second thing is we're always going back for feedback. You know that, right? Like, we examine our pictures and we go, what did we do? Did we get what we wanted? And if not, how do we do it different? And so it's so valuable for us to have that available in order to go back and just continue to improve the results that we give to people. So, making sure that those pictures are standardized and comparable is just key too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really great too. I think a lot of times patients like to have a copy emailed so they can share them with friends and family, right? Like, they're like, look.
Yeah.
But, and again, that just goes to show you, when you've been mapped properly and you've been quoted the right amount of cycles to get you to the end point where you're happy,
Yeah.
right? Then it just makes all the difference. I
Yeah,
think it's easy to kind of be sheepish and say, oh, well, maybe we only have to do just a little bit here, and we probably, and then they're like, oh, okay, I'll do that, but I'd rather not.
Yeah,
I'd rather not treat somebody unless I can do it properly.
Yeah, and just match their goals to their personal vision of what they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So so those are some of the issues that come up with CoolSculpting and why it might be perceived not to work. And less commonly are those people who are non-responders. They exist just as
I don't think I've never seen one.
I haven't either, because it's like 1% or less or something.
Yeah.
I have seen people who are super responders. I have seen a few people who are like eight weeks out and they saw a tremendous result, right?
Yeah.
Chantel being one of them, I think she was like looking great at 8 weeks. So
I feel like I responded pretty well too. Like,
yeah.
And I think it's interesting too, when you've talked about, how it is also can be used in combination with people that maybe have had surgery, right? How many people do you see that have that tummy tuck? After they've had or the mommy makeover, whatever you want to call it, they get a lift in the breast and they get their tummies done.
Yeah.
But they don't get the back touched. And they're
right.
sort of like flat on the front and they look heavy in the back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where CoolSculpting is awesome.
Totally. It's not one or the other. Sometimes you can use a combination, right? And we'll touch on that a little bit more, because one of the beautiful things about CoolSculpting too is that you don't remove all of the fat cells, and you don't think of that as being a plus, right? You think, oh, I want fat gone, I want it all gone.
All of it.
you kind of don't, because the thing is, your body is going to change. You will at some point gain or lose weight, and you want to maintain that shape. And sometimes with surgical approaches, you're removing so much of the fat that when you do gain fat, you don't gain fat in the area that was liposuction, because they removed so much of the fat. It's going elsewhere and it alters that shape, right? And so the beauty of these non-surgical approaches is you are actually not removing so much fat that it will change the shape as you age. And like we talked about in our earlier live, it's really that shape that creates that beauty, right? Not necessarily size.
Totally.
That
shape, it's like that hourglass.
Yeah, right? And then we want tightness, right? That's the other thing.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, though, when you look at you can look at a plus size model, like a curvy model, and she's just as beautiful as the skinny model. And but like you said, a lot of times it's because they have that similar kind of feminine shape that
totally
our eyes just sort of, for whatever reason, think is attractive, right?
Yeah.
It's just kind of like when you talk about faces, right? And you talk about the law of thirds and photography, right?
That's
There's these mathematical, my son would be thrilled, but there's some sort of mathematical reason why we think things are attractive or not, or less attractive, right?
yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
And then
So
I guess the other cool thing, like you mentioned, is the tightening, right? So I have had people say, oh, like I've got a little bit of loose skin. I've had kids. I have this, bit of a pooch now. I've got my menopause. I heard that the other day. Thought that was pretty funny.
that I gotcha.
And that would be me. I've had two kids, so I've got a little bit of, if I lose too much weight, I'm still not skinny by any stretch of the imagination, but I've got that little bit of laxity to my skin. And then I'm thinking, well, if I cool sculpt, now what? Like, what am I going to be left with, right?
Yeah.
But we
Well,
can we can address it.
we can address it if it is an issue. However, in our experience, when you do cool sculpting, I like to tell people that you will remove the fat. That there is a little bit of a tightening effect even with the cold, and you'll get what we call redraping. So if you have laxity to start with, like there's
Mm-hmm.
a bit of looseness there, most likely when you have cool sculpting, that laxity will not get worse. It will look the same to you. But if in
Okay.
your mind you're thinking, I want tightening, like, hey, I want some fat loss and I want tightening, then we have some of the skin tightening modalities to address that issue in combination with, because tightness looks good too. You can have the shape, but you and I both know if there's laxity, that doesn't do much for your self-confidence. If you're in clothes, whatever, but swimsuit,
It's
summertime,
it's the bikini thing, right?
yeah, that laxity, if you're finding that to be a concern, then we have other ways to address it, whether it be Morpheus body, or adding on body effects to create some tightening primarily. But if you're pretty tight to start with, or if there's minimal laxity and that's not impacting you, and your concern is mostly to look great in clothing, then cool sculpting alone might be the solution. But again, that's why you got to come in and talk to somebody who knows,
Yeah.
right? They
That's why
can
you come and see me, and we sit
yeah,
down and we assess the area together, and make a plan that makes sense.
yeah,
Because everybody's so different. Like, just like we said, their aesthetic goals are different. Somebody wants to look good in their bathing suit, somebody wants to look good in their little black dress, and somebody wants
yeah,
to look good in their birthday suit. And it's different for everybody, literally body, right?
exactly.
And and that's why there's so many different adapters for cool sculpting, because it's interesting when you're doing abdomens, even like you just sort of assume everybody's going to be that same, and it's not. I've had patients where it's completely oriented, like the fat pad is oriented in a completely different way.
Yeah,
And it's the more people you kind of assess and touch and feel and look at it, you realize like it takes skill to
takes
get it
100% skill.
to look
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah,
And it's
100%.
permanent, so like you kind of want to make sure you get it done right. That's the other beautiful thing about cool sculpting. I think it's easy to sort of forget the fact that, like, when it's done and you're happy with that shape and that area, it's done,
It's done. Yeah,
right?
you may change in size, but that
Mm-hmm.
shape is gonna stay. That shape is yours, which is pretty darn awesome. Um,
And no downtime, really. Like,
yeah,
I mean, and yes, there's a time for surgery, and it's not that it's one is better or worse. It's just, they're just different. But most of the women that I talk to don't want to take time off from work, don't want to have, anesthetic, don't want to have compression garments and things like, and maybe a drain and all of that going for, weeks.
yeah,
Um, and like I said, for those people that don't want that and are willing to kind of, maybe go a little slower, but eventually get there, that it's such a good option.
it is. Yeah. So cool sculpting works. If it doesn't, or if your experience has been that it hasn't given you the results that you wanted, most
Mm-hmm.
likely the issue is that not enough cycles were used. They weren't used in the right places on your body.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you didn't have enough done, meaning your perception or your goals were really to reduce that area by 50%, which means you needed 2 sessions, and that you weren't counseled as such. So when you're considering CoolSculpting, those are some of the issues that can come up. So, you know, experience is key. Having enough done is key. And, you know, there are very, very, very few people who are non-responders. I personally haven't seen any.
I haven't yet either, but
yeah. So, but we'll get, I think we're going to get more into depth about what you were talking about just now, some of the surgical versus non-surgical concerns next week. And we'll probably be on it too, but I'm seeing there's a lot more people who are maybe getting off work and available to watch us at 4. So we'll keep you posted.
Maybe it'll be at 4.
Maybe it'll be at 4. And then maybe my kids will pop in again this time because they're back from school. Who knows? Who knows? Okay. Well, have a great rest of your day, guys. And message us with your questions.
Yeah, do.
If anyone watching now has any questions, just pop them in there because we'd be happy to answer them. We love chatting with you guys. But if not, I'm going to go back to seeing what my kids are up to. Apparently my son wanted something.
Yeah, what else is new? And also though, just to mention too, and even if it doesn't have anything to do with CoolSculpting, if anybody that's watching this is like got a question about anything in terms of sort of medical aesthetics and what we do, or has maybe a topic or something that you want us to cover, you can always just pop that into the messages as well. We love to kind of get feedback from what our viewers are interested in learning about.
Absolutely. Tell us what's working, tell us what's not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, have a great evening.
You